My name is Andrea Courier, and this is my Module 4 Reflection for EDL 655. So for Part 1, for the experimentation summary, I'm going to go ahead and discuss what we did collaboratively and individually for our group project, or for our DT project. So we developed a prototype for teaching students about digital citizenship, and this week we each worked on 3 slides, and we worked on recording the presentations for our 3 slides, and I went ahead and put all 3 slides together onto a YouTube video to go ahead and post on Blackboard, which we did. Once we posted on Blackboard, we waited a couple days, we got back together and realized we only had 1 response. So we ended up meeting again another time to go ahead and look at our responses, and we found we had 7 responses. So at that point, we went ahead and we read the responses and completed the second portion of our project. And we did go back, and we also, as a group, we read over and looked over 2 other projects and gave them some feedback. So some challenges this week, we're definitely waiting to see when our peers would respond so we could go ahead and proceed forward. All of us did have a lot going on this week, so it was a little bit difficult this week to go ahead and meet. However, we did overcome those challenges because we were super flexible with each other, and it worked out really well. As far as implementing this DT process in the classroom or with our colleagues, we did discuss this, and we discussed that it would definitely take a lot of DT or a lot of PD to go through and to actually explain the DT process and to explain the benefits of the process, as well as going through the process itself. It would take a lot of time and it would take a lot of effort. However, we do feel that it would be beneficial to our colleagues to do that. To ensure collaboration, we made sure that we met frequently for our experimentation portion of the assignment. And it did work out rather well, working together and also individually to record our sections and share the responsibility. For part 2 of this assignment, this week, I did meet with Andrea Jacobs, and we discussed the article "If I Had a Hammer: Technology in the English Language Classroom" by Richard Jester. And we did come up with several questions. We discussed them and created some answers or potential answers for them. Our first question is, how can students use multimedia during the reading and writing process and focus on the content they're creating without getting caught up in the appearance? So Andrea J. as an elementary school and myself as a middle school teacher, we both concurred that students do get wrapped up in the aesthetics of a presentation more so than the content. So we discussed alleviating this situation by setting rules and setting norms and letting students know that their content is much more valuable than the actual appearance of it, and making sure that we let students know that the appearance of their slides or their presentation need to be an afterthought, not a forethought. Our second question was, presentation tools and multimedia software make it easier to edit. However, how can one see how far they have come when deleting a word or sentence is so easily done? And we both agree that this is always going to be a challenge, that technology does make it easier for students to edit and change their work, but it makes it difficult for teachers to see if we are moving in the right direction. So sometimes students edit their work and they actually draw back from where we want them to go, so that's going to be a little bit hard for us to see in those circumstances. We did speak about some software that we can go back and look at revision history, like Google Docs. However, that's not always the best answer because sometimes the revision history is not there, so that's also going to be a hardship. So at the very end of this discussion, we decided that there is no right answer as of yet, but that is definitely an area that needs to be explored. Another question we discussed were, are computers more catalysts for learning or tools for production? And we discussed that students definitely, especially at the age group that we have, elementary and middle school, need to know how to use these tools in their originated sense prior to continuing on and using them in other means. So for example, presentation tools, teaching students how to use presentation tools as a presentation tool is key. As a presentation tool is a key, because oftentimes students don't know how to use a presentation tool for its intended purposes. They tend to ramble on or write all their speech on one slide when that is not the point of a presentation tool. So teaching them how to use it first off as a presentation tool and then progressing on to other forms of using this tool is definitely an integral part of using technology. Our second question was, multimedia presentations allow for natural division to help student ideas, which is a quote from Jester, but is it always true? So we did discuss that in the upper grades, so maybe high school, definitely college, grad school definitely, and so on, we naturally know where the division of slides are. So we have an idea of how to divide slides. However, at the middle school and elementary school levels, they may not know how to do that. So again, we need to make sure to teach that explicitly before we can continue on with using the presentation tools in that manner. So again, explicitly teaching them how to use the presentation tool is key before we move on to using it for grammar or using it for spelling or things like that. Our last question was, language on computers is more malleable compared to on a poster, but do students always know how to use correct grammar? And Andrea and I both agree that students definitely need to know how to use grammar prior to using a presentation tool. We find that students at the elementary school and middle school level still constantly make mistakes that the program or the software does not catch, like using a lowercase I when you want to use the pronoun I, or with using there when making sure that you use the correct form of there. Those things, for example, a computer system software may not pick up as an error, which will remain there if a student were to go back and review it and overlook it, or not go back at all. It's going to remain as an error and it'll be detrimental to them and their grades. So again, making sure they know the basic rules of spelling and of grammar prior to involving a presentation tool is definitely key. In our discussion, we were discussing other facets of the article, including the fact that he is right in the fact that using a presentation tool does make it a lot easier for us as educators to identify errors. Because the screen is so large and because it only allows for a certain number of texts on the page, we can see errors more frequently and we can go ahead and correct those errors right then and there, instead of having them turn in a piece of work, correct it, and then give it back to them. So we can, in that case, use technology as a tool for correction with a more prompt response.